Once these seats are filled in, your option is the
Let's get started, and Mr. Minority Leader, you are here to present House Bill 1037.
I regard it as providential that I am here this afternoon with this bill to do precisely that. I share in the mourning, the anger, the outrage, and the determination to do something to protect our children that has dominated the media since last Wednesday. I will never forget the day of April 20th, 1999, when my classmates and friends from Columbine High School rallied at my elementary school, Leawood. I will never forget seeing a longtime friend's dad who asked me, "Pat, have you seen my son?" Unfortunately, he never saw his son alive again. I never want my kids to go through the same thing. I never want anyone to experience that father's pain. And so I offer this bill as a partial but effective remedy to the trouble we face. Some might ask, isn't there something else we can do? Can't we talk about banning AR-15s or improving mental health or registering guns or simply banning them altogether by going house to house to confiscate them? Sure, we can talk about those things. If someone wants to introduce a bill on those topics, we'll debate them. Fact is, we've been talking about them for some time. But what concerns me and my wife and many of the other parents are questions like this. In sending my girls to school, might I also be sending them to slaughter? I'm tired of just talking. I want to do something to protect our children. Not 10 years or 10 months from now, but now, or soon, as the governor signs this bill.
My name is Jennifer Thompson, but all my classmates from Columbine High School know me as Jen Smull. On April 20th, 1999, I was a sophomore trapped inside a science class with a few teachers, dozens of students, and a dying teacher for 4 hours.
And
we
also,
ended up
one
being
thing I
the
failed to
last
mention
group
at the
out
beginning
alive
is
that day.
there may be
Looking back on my experiences, it has become obvious to me that had one of the teachers had a firearm on them that day, the attack would have been cut short, and Mr. Sanders and many of the victims of that day could very well be alive today. I have also have the support of the deceased teacher's daughter, Angela Sanders, to help push this bill into law. All I ask is that you seriously ask yourselves what kind of defensive measures you would take to protect your own children from a mass shooting.
After 5 years of fighting dangerous gun bills, it no longer surprises me that the answer to gun violence that has plagued our state is always more guns. I have sat through committee hearings and listened to gun lobby activists avow that my sister Mary, the school psychologist at Sandy Hook, should have been armed. I have heard that if Mary had a gun, she would have been able to shoot and kill the disturbed young man that blasted his way into her school, killing her, 20 little children, and 5 other educators. This scenario has my sister either carrying a loaded sidearm or having a loaded gun at the ready to take on a shooter. Advocates of gun in schools have a Hollywood idea of what my sister and the 3 brave educators murdered on Valentine's Day would have been capable of doing against an armed intruder. My sister was running a meeting. In the gun extremist worldview, upon hearing the blast, Mary would have been calm and focused enough to know what had occurred beyond the rooms she was in. Mary would have been able to know that an armed male had blasted his way through the front door, and now was the time to grab her gun from a locked safe, because clearly she wouldn't leave a loaded firearm anywhere a student might be able to take it. In the if I was there world of gun extremists, Mary would have come running around a blind corner to the school lobby, firing her gun and killing the shooter before he could kill her or anyone else. In this fantasy version, Mary is a superhero of epic proportion. Do we as a society believe that putting guns into our teachers' hands in our children's classroom is the best answer to gun violence in our schools? I think not. Gun extremists want to put guns in our kids' schools, expecting our educators to stand up to armed gunmen because cowardly, craven legislators won't stand up to the NRA.
This gal that was just up here speaks like she's been through something like we have, and she hasn't. 19 years ago, I survived one of the worst shootings in Colorado, right? I mean, I survived Columbine. I was lucky. My wife was lucky. My sister on the library was lucky. My friend Pat here was lucky, and the people here with me were lucky. We had one resource officer that was mentioned before. That was not enough. So many kids lost their lives. We had a teacher named Dave Sanders who gave his life, shielding students. What if he had a weapon on him, a concealed weapon? What if? It's a choice. It could be a life or many lives. We need to allow concealed carry on school campuses.
There are numerous reasons for opposing this bill, including the absurd notion that most killers who are usually crazed would care whether there's a deterrence or not. And also the absurd notion that we should just allow any person with a CCW permit to carry a concealed weapon in our schools. We've seen that many kids today are now scared in school. It's myopic to think that most will suddenly be comforted by having armed strangers walking their hallways. I'm here to say it's very frustrating to see this bill here once again. Yes, it's legislators' right to introduce it again, but there's a big difference between a right and doing what is right by society. This society has witnessed so much pain from gun violence, and yet we still have a fringe element that claims the only way to be safe from that gun violence is to introduce more firearms and more concealed firearms into the mix. But the reality is we've already done that in this country. For decades, America has allowed itself to become heavily armed with few restrictions, with the most guns in the free world and the most concealed carries. We've already done that. So tell me, how has that worked for us?